Okay, chat. Today it's going to be a really light video. I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about, again, sort of the evolution of star skills in the game, particularly star spending skills. And I thought this was an interesting topic that chat brought up, and they said, why don't you talk about this and give your 2 cents on it? So I will. Again, just to start out with here, we've got Moriarty, and he was our first real star spending unit in the game. And I may have forgotten some of them here, so bear with me, but this is one of those deals where I thought it was at least interesting to see how when they first brought Moriarty online, the very first problem that we had with him is that he had a star consumption skill. Well, Moriarty was a buster unit. We didn't have him necessarily having the capability to produce stars. Certainly, if you would put him in tandem with someone like, say, Merlin back in the day, you could maybe get stars off of Merlin's NP and you'd have enough. Or maybe you just get the passive star gen off of, again, his 3-hit quick here. And that could be certainly something that would allow you guys to get enough stars in the right set of circumstances in order to be able to use this. The problem is his charge was locked behind this skill, so it became an issue. I thought it was a really cool concept when they first brought this in the game, the idea of, hey, now there's an actual use, an actual, you're turning stars into more of a currency than they were before. Because for years in FGO, we had this sort of issue where, again, stars had been sort of relegated to not uselessness, but just easy generation. We had so many other ways that we could generate it that quick sort of ceased to matter, and it became less of an issue. Now, part of this is because they started putting in things into the game like literally Fragment of 2030, or again, Mystic Coast that gave you guys stars when you popped them. Or again, just even units like, say, Cast Guild that allowed you to actually generate stars quite a significant amount more. So very quickly, Quick began to have issues as a card type and as a niche. Now, this isn't a video on Quick, but that was where I saw them actually giving a use for critical stars, and for having too many of them actually sounded like a great idea. But I don't know why their first foray into this was to give it to a buster unit. In fact, it's almost like they were trying to get you to use Quick more on units that weren't Quick, when the issue was people not really having a reason to use Quick units a lot. Now, again, that's sort of not the whole story there. There's plenty of reasons to use a unit that's Quick based. It just was one of those deals where instead the card type wasn't really lending itself or doing itself any favors. It wasn't really lending itself to you using those units. It wasn't a feather in the cap of a Quick unit that it was in fact Quick. Whereas with Arts and Buster, we can clearly point to advantages that units would have if they were that type. In Quick's case, the only real advantage that a lot of them have was a smidge little bit more on NP damage, and that's just due to the scaling of that. So I actually found it really weird that they came out with the very first one here and made it on a Buster unit and not on a Quick unit. That is to say that Quick units had the capability of actually utilizing the stars that they generated to make themselves more powerful. This becomes a growing trend as we go down here, as I cover some of these other options, just to kind of show you. But eventually this does kind of get dealt with. Not only does Moriarty actually get a buff to the second skill here, that basically, as you guys can see, can only be used when there are 10 critical stars or more and no longer consumes the stars, but he also got a buff to his first skill that finally gave him a crit star bomb. So they gave him the solution to his own problem, to his own limitation, largely freeing up Moriarty to be a lot more usable and a lot easier placed in any sort of team comp. Now, this is actually hilarious, and I'll talk about it again more towards the end, but the supports have just sort of absolutely just destroyed this issue entirely for Moriarty, and it's kind of funny to see that happen. But so the next up after Moriarty, we actually saw Semiramis come into the game, and Semiramis is a unit that honestly, in my opinion, still absolutely needs an upgrade. She is just one of the sort of left behind units right now, where you've got a lot of units outscaling her, particularly even within her own class. You've got units like, say, Gray that are a welfare that again, just have grown leaps and bounds from their original implementation, and Semiramis is really struggling for that. But one of the issues I have with Semiramis is her third skill here. Now, well, it's better than Moriarty from the stance that you don't require charge in order, or sorry, you're not unlocking her charge skill by doing this. So basically, she's not as hamstrung by having a skill locked behind stars. The issue was still, though, that this was impacting her damage output. And you can see that it reduces a target's damage by, again, 50% at max rank here. So this is a sizable portion towards, again, what people would consider her normal calculable damage. So if you didn't have the stars in a Semiramis setup, that really hurt. Thankfully, though, she is an assassin, so she had a little bit of an easier time actually generating stars. And you guys can see she does have a 4-hit quick, but then you get the really odd setup of her low-key being a caster, even though she's an assassin, where she straight up gets triple arts in her deck. So that does her no favors because arts cards do not generate stars very well. That being said, you can still generate stars with them, but it was an interesting problem for her to have. In Semiramis' case, she has never had a buff. This has never been dealt with. So this is, to me, one of their biggest failures at this point in time, and I'm really surprised that they haven't done something about this. Again, there's numerous theories I've heard over the years from the JP player base not liking Semiramis as much, and again, I don't know if that holds any actual weight, or again, just, hey, she's just kind of out of tune, and they haven't really had a good chance by which to buff her since all the Apocrypha stuff is done. But again, I think you guys will see coming up here on NA, there is going to be the Summer Apocrypha banner that does include Semiramis. And they easily could have hit her with a buff at that point in time, because already at that point in time, she'd been several years in the game and already getting outpaced by a lot of other units. So I think it's really crazy that they didn't take that opportunity. And now, yeah, I'd say they don't necessarily have the greatest of opportunities to buff her if they want to do it in some sort of like timely and synergistic manner. This is why I say, again, they just need to actually buff some of the units, and regardless of the reasoning, right? They need to actually just say, hey, look, even though we don't have a specific time to buff this unit, let's go ahead and do it. So Semiramis's skill here, largely the same deal as Moriarty, not necessarily as bad, but not necessarily as good either, because she didn't get any of the fixes that Moriarty did. So in that regard, Moriarty's definitely gotten a lot more attention than her. And I know I just made a video about single target archers not getting a lot of attention, but that's more on the damage side of things. Then we get to the third unit here, and this one's Estrella. And Estrella had this a lot better. By the time Estrella comes out, she is sort of your all-in-one type of unit, where she has all of the self-sufficiency. She has everything she needs in her own kit to solve all of her own issues. You guys can see here, her third skill basically can only be used when there are 5 critical stars or more, and it will consume the stars. The issue here is, while yes, this does increase her charge and her crit damage on top of that, she definitely has a crit star bomb in her kit of 30 stars, which again, at 30, that's really sizable. That's really strong. That's plenty that she would need in order to be able to not only cover the requirement of that third skill, but also just straight up have stars still to crit even after that consumption. So the fact that she has that, and she has the capability of basically, again, just boosting her damage output so much, I find it really funny too, because she has the critical star absorption, she has the crit damage, she has the star gen all in one, and that is a self-sufficient both star engine and star consumption unit. We've seen this before with again, units like, say, Lancelot, but obviously he doesn't have the star consumption side of it, but he has the ability to increase his crit damage, increase his star soaking, and increase his star gen. So same thing basically here, except instead of the star gen, you just have a star bomb to make up for that. And honestly, it works really well in her case. So you can basically see that pretty much already by Estrella, they had already realized this was a problem, and they had already turned the corner and given the unit straight up exactly what it needed in order to be able to resolve this issue. Then from there, we get to Calamity Jane. And Calamity Jane's another interesting one. She doesn't consume stars. Rather, in her case, her skill changes based off the amount of stars you do have. So it's like a currency system, only you never end up having to spend that currency. So you still get the benefit of actually having the crit stars. And that's really, really strong for her. The problem is, in this case, I think, well, it's a well-intentioned skill. It's a little bit wonky to use, because unless you're using a lot of star bombs, or unless you have someone that's an excellent star generator alongside of her, I think you'll see it's very difficult to actually get to the point of, like, say, 50 stars here, where you can actually charge the target's gauge by 20%. So that becomes a lot more of a, like, hey, can I actually get the amount of stars that I need to make this skill work? But I think, again, if your whole goal is to be able to use Calamity Jane effectively, you're going to come up with some sort of strategy by which to do that. And it's the same thing with all of these prior units here, with Moriarty, with Semiramis, with Estrella. If you really are worried about the stars, there's things you can do. In fact, for years, I've heard this as a knock against, like, say, Avengers, right? That, oh, well, maybe they have high crit damage, but who cares? They can't soak the stars. And the thing that I have talked about before to a lot of people is like, look, the easiest solution to that, if you had a unit that really struggled with stars, was to just simply flood the party with stars. The more stars you put in there, if you're running, like, say, double Merlin with their NPs rolling, you're getting a lot of stars out of that. Same thing if you're, like, maybe having somebody that has Fragment of 2030 on them, or maybe just some sort of really good star gen of their own. Maybe you have a star bomb to complement, like from a Mystic code, or again from someone's kit. All of a sudden, you can just bomb the amount of stars that you would need, so much so that it doesn't matter who else's cards are active at the moment. You can get that Avenger their stars. And so it's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. And that's why I'm saying a lot of this is just being a good master and structuring your teams properly, which is, again, another video I've been asked to make, so I'll probably get around to that at some point. But it is an interesting concept to me that some people would sit here and point out how bad this skill is, but the reality is it's up to you to actually determine the comp necessary to make it useful, right? I think that's the part about being a good master, is addressing a servant's deficiencies and tailoring the comp to the servant's strengths. If you're going to use Calamity Jane, you're going to want somebody that can actually provide the stars to help that out. Now, then we get to Miss Crane, and I'll actually end up talking about Miss Crane a lot in the coming weeks here, as, again, we do have Grail Live coming up. Miss Crane's a really interesting case where her NP can only be used when there are 20 critical stars or more. But they did give her a really interesting but restrictive solution to it, and that's with her first skill here, that basically she will generate crit stars based off the number of costume-owning allies in the party, except herself. I do find it funny that they exempted herself because she doesn't have a costume, but I guess they were protecting themselves from the future of that maybe being a thing. It is an interesting thing, though, because it does actually mean that, hey, costumes actually have some sort of gameplay value to them. But I did find this to be, hey, we're also making it so that you can't go too hard with this, so that you can't maybe abuse Crane too much, right? Because I think the thing that's really strong about Crane is not only can she boost damage, but she acts as a sort of free, sort of not time-locked plug suit. So in that regard, you are able to swap the party around without killing anyone and still get the benefits of having used the order change skill on a plug suit without actually having to either take plug suit, or maybe you get a second one in addition to that. So it makes Miss Crane really strong at times, so I can see why they would want to limit it. And so in that regard, I don't have any issue with this. Only maybe the issue is the issue that I think a lot of people complain about nowadays, which is, where the hell are our costumes, Lasengle? Holy crap, there are so many good costumes out there that we haven't gotten that you've teased, and there are so many units that we feel like could use a costume at this point. So again, please hire more animators. And then we get to the final one that I'm going to talk about here, and this to me is the ultimate in sort of star consumption technology that they've released now, which is Cuckoo. And Cuckoo's a really, really intriguing unit to me, where they gave you the choice now. And this makes perfect sense to me, because not only, like, I think if this had come out year one, we would have been like, well, at least they gave you the choice, but this is kind of shitty because maybe we're going to have a hard time actually getting the stars into the party to make this worthwhile. Nowadays, though, due to the, again, just craziness of our buster supports, you literally have Koyanskaya, who has a star bomb on her second skill, and you have Oberon, who has a star bomb on his second skill. So both the quote-unquote meta buster supports right now have stars in their kit. And even if you're going to use someone like, say, Merlin in a challenge scenario, he also generates stars as part of his MP. So literally, Buster has the easiest solution in the world for this right now, as long as you are taking an actual, like, sort of relevant support for them, you probably have stars as a solution. So with regards to Cuckoo, you have the ability to choose, again, whether or not you wish to just take the normal version of the skill, or again, the optional increase that just further increases the capabilities of that skill. It's a really, really intriguing system, and I really like it because it sort of allows you to say, like, hey, no, I don't want to use the stars this turn. Maybe I need it for the cards. Or, hey, maybe I'm just going to actually be able to get the stars through some other source, or maybe just through Cuckoo herself, because her NP actually gives, again, 30 stars right there. So it is another really interesting thing to me that they gave her the solution within her own kit, but they also just knew that you would readily have the solution by virtue of the supports that you're probably going to be running with her. So I think the whole concept of star consumption has come a long way. And I think the general like thought that I can leave you guys with after all of this is the devs do learn, they do adapt, and they have evolved their tactics. And sort of the undercutting lesson that I think you guys can all learn here as well is that absolutely Semiramis just needs a buff, and I don't know what the devs are doing in that regard. So again, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys would want to see. How would you guys fix the star situation, especially with regards to quick? And what do you guys want to see for the evolution of some of these units and maybe like how they handle star consumption skills in the future? Also, if you guys haven't already, definitely check me out on Twitch weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Friday, I'll be doing a charity stream. I hope to see you guys there for that. It's for a great cause about bringing video games to kids that have been hospitalized. So I think you guys will definitely appreciate that if you're a fan of video games like I am. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you for the next one.